of trigonometry. So for junior cert trigonometry, we only need to know two things. We need to know that we're either going to use Pythagoras or we're going to use sine, cos and tan. So they're the only two options. So whenever you come across a trigonometry question, you'll know it's trigonometry because you'll have triangles, right angle triangles and angles. You're either going to use Pythagoras or sine, cos and tan. So the steps for both of using these is, the first thing we need to do is make sure we label H, A and O. They're the different sides, remembering that H is the largest side, it's the side opposite 90 degrees. A and O then, they don't matter unless we've been giving it another angle. So we'll look at that in a second. If we're given another angle, O represents opposite, so that is going to be O for opposite. And then A is adjacent, it just runs alongside the two angles, so the right angle and the adjacent. So for instance, if I had a right angle triangle here, and let's say that I call that 30, then my H is always going to be opposite the 90 degrees, so that's going to be H for hypotenuse. O is going to be opposite the other angle, so opposite the other angle given, that's O, and then adjacent lies along the two angles that have been given. So that's the three different ones that we need to know. We have to be able to do that with each triangle. If they didn't give me that 30 there, then I would still know that this is H because it's opposite to the other angle. Sorry, it's opposite to the 90 degrees. O and A in that case don't matter. So I can write them as O and A that way, or I can write them as O and A that way. Makes no difference. This will be used in Pythagoras. So the O and the A don't matter in Pythagoras, whereas once you start bringing in an angle, that's when O and A matter. O has to be across the way from that angle. Okay, the second step then when you're doing these questions is to either pick Pythagoras or sine, cos and tan. And the reason you'll know it's Pythagoras, it's the easier one to spot, is you'll have two sides, you'll be looking for a third. Every other time you're using sine, cos and tan. So two sides and looking for a third. The third thing then is you need to write out which formula you've picked. You need to write your Pythagoras' theorem. Your Pythagoras' theorem then is H squared equals A squared plus O squared. Or you need to write out your sine, cos and tan, and you can do that using SOHCAHTOA. Okay, so what that means then, just if we can't remember, is sine goes with O and H, so that means that sine of any angle, A for capital for an angle, is A over H. That is A over H. Cos of any angle is going to equal, sorry, I'm just saying that A over H, that should be O over H. Cos of any angle is going to be A over H. So for sine, it's this over this as a fraction, and for cos, it's this over this as a fraction. And the last one then, tan of any angle is going to give me O over A. So this over this, and they're all going to be lengths. So there's our first three steps. You write out the formula, or sorry, you label your sides, you pick either Pythagoras, sine, cos and tan. So you're either writing this or you're writing one of these three. And then the third step is write out the formula, fill in the information. So fill in H, O, A or the angle. You'll have two out of the three pieces, you always do, and you'll be looking to find the third. To find the third, then you isolate that unknown. So you'll try and get that one, the value that we don't know, on its own. But remember, if you're trying to split up the angle and sine, cos and tan, this is the angle and sine, cos and tan, you must use what's called sine inverse, tan inverse, cos inverse. So on your calculator, if you look at the sine button, above it you'll see little sine with a -1 here. That's sine inverse. So to get sine inverse, what you need to do is press shift and sine, and you'll get sine with a little -1. Same for cos. Shift and cos gives you cos with a -1, that's cos inverse. And shift and tan gives you tan inverse. That is the way that you split them up. And we'll look at that then a little bit closer in a second. So that's all the information. That is the entire of trigonometry in a nutshell there for junior cert. We're going to look now at applying this. We have 6 questions, and then that's all we need to do for trigonometry. That's everything that you need to be able to do. So these first 2 questions, what I'll do is it'll allow us to be able to see the information as well. So I'll move this here. So there's our information on the left hand side, and our questions are on the right hand side. So let's go through these questions. The first one then, they're asking me to put a little x here and a little x here. They're asking me to find the unknown sides. So they're asking me to find the value of x. So to find the unknown sides, what I'm looking to do there is I need to, first of all, label h, o, and a. So when I label h, o, and a, I know that that is going to be my h. Then there's no other angle given here, so I know that O and A don't matter, and if O and A don't matter, that means that I'm going to have to use Pythagoras. I also know what I've been given two sides and I'm looking for a third, so I'm using Pythagoras. So step 1 I've labelled, step 2 I've picked Pythagoras. So I'm going to write out my formula now. And I'm going to fill in that formula. So when I fill in that formula, h is just x, so I'm going to say x squared. O is 5, so I'm going to say 5 squared, plus A is 12 squared. So I'm going to just I can put this whole thing in the calculator if I want, or I can multiply it out. That's 25 and 144. That's x squared equals 169. So to get this to be x, to isolate the x, I need to bring this square over, and when I bring over the square, it becomes a square root of 169, so x is equal to 13. They didn't say centimetres or anything, so I don't need to, but if they had said centimetres, I'd need to put my centimetres at the end. Second question then, so if you want to pause the video, you can try that second question yourself. I'm going to go ahead and do it now. So first step, again, looking at my steps up here. First step is label H, O, and A. I know H is going to be opposite the right angle. There's no other angle given, so that means that I'm going to call them whatever I want, O and A like that. Okay, there's my first step. Second step, pick Pythagoras or sine, cos, and tan. I have two sides, I'm looking for a third. I also know there was no other angle, which means that I have to be using Pythagoras. I write out my formula and I fill in my formula. So h is 26 squared equals 10 squared plus x squared. Okay, so I'm going to check what 26 squared is. 26 squared is 676. I know 10 squared is 100 plus x squared. My final step is I need to isolate the unknown. So I need to get this on its own on the one side, and then I need to solve to find it. Just put a line down there so we can see the difference. So I need to get this on its own. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move everything else to the other side of the equals. This is already on the other side, so that's fine. This needs to go over, and because it's adding, it means it's going to go across and it's going to become minus. Okay, so that's going to be 576 is equal to x squared. How do I get rid of that? I bring it across and it becomes the square root. I check what the square root of 576 is, and I get the answer of 24. And again, I'd write centimetres in there if they did, but they didn't, so I'm fine with this one. And that's that question there. So the first three questions on your sheet are those kind. If you want to go give them a go now, you can. I'm going to keep going and we're going to try the next ones. So this question 3 and 4 here, I'm going to move it up to here. Okay, next three questions then, or next two questions then. So for these ones then, same rules apply. My step 1 is to label the sides. And I'm labeling them H, O, and A. So I know now that that's my right angle there. So this is going to be my H. There's the other angle. So now I know that I'm not using Pythagoras because I have my O that's opposite. The other one then must be A. So I'm going to use then, I have O and I have H. I know I'm not using Pythagoras because I am not looking for a third side. I'm looking for a second side. So I have to use the angle. So I'm using sine, cos, and tan. There's nothing there for A, so I'm ignoring A. So I'm using O and H. Which one goes with O and H? SOH. So I'm writing out the formula. Sine of an angle equals O over H. And I'm going to fill in that formula. Sine of the angle that I have here is 30. It's always the other angle, not the 90 degrees. Equals O is x and H is 13. And my last bit then, so I've done my third one. The last bit is isolate the unknown. So I need to isolate the unknown. So this is my unknown. I need to get it on its own. So this here, I now ask myself, what is that doing on the right hand side? I need to bring it to the left hand side of the equals. So it is dividing there. So it's going to do the opposite on the other side. It's going to multiply. So I'm going to stick that in front of the sine 30. Make sure it never multiplies by this part because this is one single thing. It needs to stick together so nothing can go in between it. So I type in 13 sine 30 into my calculator and I'm getting 6.5 is equal to x. And that's my answer for that one. Next, question 4. Again, if you want to pause the video, you can try it yourself, you can. I'm going to keep going and try it here. So first step is label H, A, and O. I can see that this is going to be my H. There's my other angle, so that must mean that the opposite to it is O, which leaves that to be A. I know now it's not Pythagoras because I have an angle here and I have only one side. So I'm using sine, cos, and tan. So when I'm using sine, cos, and tan, I need to pick which one it is. I have this and I'm looking for this, so it is O and H. So again, if I'm using O and H, that is going to be the sine. So I write out my formula. Sine of A equals O over H. So that's sine of the angle, which is 40, equals O, which is 3 over H, which is X. So for here, again, we know our fourth step is I need to isolate the x, I need to get it on its own. But the problem here is that this is on the bottom. So if this is on the bottom, what I need to do now is I need to do what I did earlier and I need to get rid of the fraction and move it up over here. So I'll end up with x sine 40 equals 3. But my problem now is I still have an x on that side. So I want x to be on its own. So what are these doing to each other? That they're multiplying. So that means that I'm going to bring this over to the other side and do the opposite. So I'm going to bring sine of 40 over to the other side and I am going to divide by it. So when I put all of that into the calculator, I end up getting 4.67 and I'm rounding there. So that is the second type. Once x is on the bottom, what you need to do is move that x up over here, sit it in front, and then take this sign and bring it to the other side. So it's an extra step in that one. Okay, so for those two questions, you can now do the questions on your sheet. Questions 4 to question 9. Question 4, 5, and 6 have the number on the bottom, so they're a bit easier. Questions 7, 8, and 9 have the x on the bottom, so you have to do that extra step. The last thing we're going to look at then are these questions here. And these questions then are when we are looking for the angle. So same rules apply. We're going to go through them and we're going to do the 4 steps and we're going to isolate and find our answer. So in this case, A is going to be the thing they're looking for, the angle. So first thing is I need to label on my side. So I know that this is going to be H because it's opposite to the 90 degrees. I know that this is going to be A because it's opposite to the angle that we're looking for, which means that that's O. Sorry, other way around. That's O, so that our 12 is A. So I know now I'm not looking for a third side, I'm looking for this angle inside there, so it means I'm using sine, cos, and tan. The two that I have are going to be A and O, so the O and the A go with tan. So I'm on my third step now. I'm looking to write out the tan of my angle equals O over A. So when I fill that in, I'm going to have tan of A, I don't know what A is, equals 5 over 12. So we said here, when you're splitting up an angle, what you need to do is use these tan inverses. So what I'm going to do to split that up, I'm going to say A equals, I'm going to bring the tan over here and I'm going to use tan minus 1 and then 5 over 12. So I get that tan by pressing shift and tan, that gives me tan inverse. I put 5 over 12 to my calculator and I get my angle to come out at 22.6 degrees. Okay, and my last question then. So for this question, again, step 1, label H, O, and A. So I know this is going to be H, I know this is going to be O because that's the angle, and then this is going to be A. So I have my sides labeled. Second step, pick Pythagoras or sine, cos, and tan. I know it's not Pythagoras because I'm not looking for the third side, I'm looking for the angle. So that means that I'm going to have to use A and H in sine, cos, and tan. That goes with cos. So cos of my angle equals A over H. So that's cos of the angle, I don't know when I fill it in, equals A is 4, H is 5. Again, splitting that up, I need to use cos minus 1, and that's 4 over 5. And I press shift and cos 4 over 5 into the calculator, and I end up getting A to B 36.9, and that's a degree. So you can now take a look at question 10, 11, 12 on the sheet.